pick up the reading. Oh, now there's a chance I won't be here tomorrow. If we're going to watch it regardless, but if I'm here, then we'll do it like I normally do when I'm doing the videos. But the second page of this is the cause, and that's what we're watching tomorrow. So if I'm not here when we have a sub, I'll just tell it turn to this page. We got that, no sweat. And it goes in order, but it does this in every video that I do. You know, I make the questions, and there might be, a few minutes where there's no questions, no answers, and then there might be like 3 answers, like 1 minute. Sorry, it's the way it happens in the video. When I'm here, I can stop and go through it, but I'm just warning you in case I'm not here. And all of you know how to act when there is a sub. We were fine. I've been gone 3 days. 3 days, so wow, it's a lot for me. And so we'll come back to that. If we get to the myth of Southern poverty, this is probably where we quit, right? Probably where we quit. And just to review, what states seeded first? And if we didn't know anything else, what fact did I show you? Percentage of slaves. Hey, what was the percentage of exports from cotton by 1860? Yeah, just under 58%, 57.5, so around 60%. But what was happening to the price of cotton? It's going down, yeah? And we didn't talk about the Middle Passage yesterday. And who invented the cotton gin? I would not tell you why it was actually invented by enslaved people in South Carolina. Also, all that did is just took the seed off of the cotton, so you have bounds of cotton and you turn to big square beds. Why was it so important? What demanded all that cotton and therefore made cotton profitable? Say it again. Textile in Britain and then elsewhere, but Britain at first, but also the northern United States. And all plantation owners, they might have had a lot of wealth. And this shows they had a lot of wealth, but they didn't have a lot of cash, liquidity, money ready to spend. They're also in a lot of what? Debt. That debt is hanging over them. But I should add, everybody's in debt. The richest people in the world are in a massive, unprecedented amount of debt. Elon Musk has no money. He just has wealth. That uses that wealth to borrow money. That's how he gets his money to spend. It's a way so he doesn't pay any taxes. So he's paid it well, then uses it to borrow, and they loan him money because he has wealth. It's basically, assets, use assets as collateral, borrow. So that's no different than that. Really rich people just borrow. But there's always debt. Where? The corners have got to be in this top. It's got to be in that tile, right? Because if it's not there, the whole room falls. Because this rug, as we all know, what's it do? If it's off, the whole thing spirals out of control. So we got to this. There's wealth up there, but it's all on the top, and it's in the hands of the big slave holder. We'll get to the reading in just a second. So that's where we get to class. There is a very, very strict class structure. And it's a very much of a feudal Europe, a feudalism, where a few big landholders called dukes or knights or whatever they might be own the land and the power. And it's stratified. It's no mobility. It's really difficult to move up in class. Slightly easier to move down in class. It's much more mobile in the north. There's much more opportunity to move up in class, but also more opportunity to move down in class, which I guess is not really an opportunity. And wealth was slaves. Oh, no, we'll get back to 1840. That's supposed to pop up. Wealth was in slaves. So you have former slaves, freed slaves, and if they start, if they want to make it in Southern society, what's the thing they do to show they have made it in Southern society? buy slaves. They buy enslaved people. That also proves to other whites they're not ready to start a slave rebellion. Remember the fear of slave rebellion. And former slaves were always being blamed for engineering, starting, talking about a slave rebellion. Let me get this. One second. So, poor whites, it's very difficult to move up in class. Maybe someday they might get that one slave, show they made it. But remember, we mentioned this before. Still have the status. That gives them something to hold on to. I have lighter colored skin. So actually, I'm closer or have the same culture as the big landholders. And that's going to tie together the poor whites who are also being kind of exploited by this system and the big landholders. And remember, I talked about the image of the 1840 campaign. Remember that log cabin campaign? You remember that log cabin and that whole thing about acting like a Westerner? Well, this has become an important part of the structure of Southern politics. This will be used, the image of this cultural connection. 1840, they tried to do it by we're all Westerners. In Southern politics, it's like we all have the same culture. What's the culture? White people. And that would convince more whites to vote for wealthy whites. So who ran? This cultural connection by color of skin. Sometimes they'll break apart. We'll talk about that right after the Civil War. There'll be a big populist wave in the 1890s, but those are going to be crushed. Kind of like what happened with Bacon's Rebellion. So this shows the percentage of slaves, and about 17% of, okay, these are white or free people in the South. 70% of the population had 1 to 9 slaves. 0.1% had more than 100 slaves, but they had the vast majority. The vast majority of slaves were held rightfully, not like today for wealth. The vast majority of people did not have slaves. Now, it's a higher percentage of people, this is the black line here, families have slaves. Because you think about it, if you just count individuals, well, who owns a slave in a family? It's the man. So technically, his wife and children don't own slaves. As families, it's closer to about 50% of families in the South had slaves, but most had 1 or 2. That I made it to this level. The vast majority were on these big slave labor camps we call plantations. And what about the very bottom? Owned by somebody else. The term for being owned by somebody else is chattel slavery. Now, there have been chattel slavery before. Remember, never before colonization was it based upon color of skin. So here, slaves going out to work, and I'll explain how the system functioned in just a second. Here, a slave market, but it was never by color of skin, and it was closer to indentured servitude. It was still horrible, don't get me wrong. Everybody knew slavery was horrible. Until later. And then we tried to say something else. The chattel slavery. And the thing about it was, let's get back. We're still talking about class here in a way, but it's a dilemma for those people who have slaves. So you have a system based upon slavery, the people who run the political structure of slaves, the slaveholders, the economic structure of slaveholders. Slaveholding dominates society. It's a dilemma for the poor slaveholders. And the dilemma is very simple. It's a conflict within their mind. It is evil to enslave another people. It is evil to torture them so they work for you until they die, so you enrich yourself. But it's evil. It is a sin. And if somebody is religious, they might not go to heaven, which is a very big fear for them, especially at the time of the Second Great Awakening. It is evil. It's working. I'm getting money. I like it. I have a mansion. I have fine wine. I have wealth. I have status. I have power. Evil. Power. Do you see the problem? It's bad. It's working for me. It's bad, but I want to do it. We call this conflict. This is a little psychology now. It's in your mind, in your conflict, or it's conflict with your mind. It's called cognitive dissonance. Dissonance means conflict. Cognitive feelings. And I should add, every single one of us has had this issue. But there's something you know is wrong. You know you shouldn't do it. Boy, you really want to. Could be a little thing, could be a big thing. Every single one, well, every single one of you, I of course never had this issue. But, okay, let me rephrase it. Everybody has had this issue unless you're a psychopath. Psychopaths don't have it. That's what makes them psychopath and or social. They don't have that conflict. But those who don't have that, we have that issue. We've all been in that situation. And this is the big thing. For most people, probably everyone, when they have cognitive dissonance, they want to figure out a way to justify doing which one. The evil. Do the evil, I'm sorry, you know what's evil? Yeah. They want to figure out a way to do evil. Find out a way. I should add one more very important thing that we all know to be true. Once you have this conflict, between the right thing and the wrong thing, you decide to do the wrong thing. Suddenly becomes easier. Suddenly becomes easier. It's a moral problem that every single person has. Back to this. Obviously, a huge moral problem for the poor slaveholders, right? And what works? What if you're not enslaving equals? What if they're not really human beings? Then it's okay, isn't it? Isn't it okay? Huh? Remember racism? That's why racism would become so. So it starts that basic thing, just basically trying to justify the power grab in Virginia after the Bacon's Rebellion, slave codes, etc. But then it became a way to justify slavery. It went beyond just simply being a way to divide people by color of skin so someone has political power. Now, justification. And remember, we have laws like the slave codes. So law, slave code. What are the social norms? That social norm is one, dividing people by color of skin. And what's the economics? Who has the economic power? Those who benefit from slavery, therefore those who benefit from racism. I repeat, you notice I am repeating this. So I'm repeating this for a reason. Not because I like to hear myself talk. I know this stuff already. To repeat, like the slave codes, social norms, like dividing people by color of skin, economics, the economic power benefits from racism. And that's how it functions. And that's why it's really hard to get rid of. You can't just simply say, hey, let's end racism and all get together and have a group hug. We are friends now. No, because you still have the legacy of all these. That's why racism can be very insidious. And also very controversial. Everybody wants to be a good person. The one they're doing bad things. So, here are two prints. They're called plates. From a book, a pro-slavery book written by 1852. And it's trying to justify slavery. And it's using this idea that you have, that racism means you have hierarchy of humans. Some humans are on top, and then there are less civilized, less advanced humans down below. And so this shows it this way. So did everyone catch what I said? It becomes not just simply one color skin's better. It is like biological. It is scientific that one race is above the other. So here it says the Negro in his own country. So Negroes have a bastard relation of Spanish for black. And remember what I told you about loincloths, right? So everyone gets that. It's what's really going on there. Own country means vaguely sub-Saharan. Got that just kind of vague sub-Saharan Africa. And bacon, spear, savage on the plains, out of control, a monster. How do we know they're a monster? What do we see on that picture? You see it? Clean, huh? Meaning, implying what? Animals. And one of the things that Europeans would do to justify conquering other areas by saying that they're all cannibals. They're all cannibals on the Congo River in Africa. We got to civilize. Were they cannibals? No, they were not. No. That did not really happen. Tiny little bit, but for the most part, never. But they said they were, proving they're savages. So if you saw this in 1850, your first thought would have been not they murdered somebody, they ate them. That's what you would have thought. Savages. Equal in America. You notice a big difference? First off, I can't get past this. Ever since I found this picture, I see this every time. The weird parallelogram frame, right? I just can't help it. That's the first thing I see. But then, notice it? Flies, at least to the point of view of somebody of European or United States ancestry. They're clothed now, right? They're not savages roaming naked on the plains. And where are they? They're in a home. And who did it? Who brought them civilization? Maybe you had to force them a little bit. Who did it? Who's in charge in that picture? There's two things they do to show one group is in charge of the other. And you notice they make it very clear. There's a separation. They're not the same. You notice how they're a little higher? A little elevated in the picture? And one more thing do you notice? Do you notice the shading? Who's in the light? Color would become a big issue for civilization. Dark, still uncivilized. In the light, civilization. Civilized, superior, above, should be in charge. And this will go to popular literature. In fact, they will call Africa, you'll see this term for Africa well into the 20th century. Africa was known as the Dark Continent. And Dark Continent because it was uncivilized. You start seeing it in the literature. You start seeing it in literature in the beginning of the 19th century, no coincidence, about what happened with colonialization and development of racism. The villain would be in what color? And the hero, white. When you start getting into the first movies, where it's all black and white, you can really show it. You show really light and dark. That's the great thing about black and white. Really, you show the dark and the light. The villains in the shadows, in the dark. And that came directly out of racism. Directly. That color, shading, light or dark, meaning civilized. So, cognitive dissonance, problem solved, we're not enslaving any. And if we're not enslaving the equal, then why should anyone be opposed to this? And so this will become the most important justification for slavery. And it would become the ideology. Ideology is a strongly held belief. And this ideology will be a justification for slavery. An ideology. And they try to say we have a scientific background by saying, what is the ideology? That slavery was a good thing because there are certain groups by color of skin that are more advanced, biologically superior than other groups. And you notice I use the word biology? Biological science was brand new in the 19th century. It is less than 100 years before this where they really started seriously dividing different species up and actually categorized by genus species, genus species, etc. And this tries, same books, one before, actually this is from another book from 1856, and it's trying to divide people, a hierarchy of humans, top down, purely by color of skin. And so the justification is they're going to say that this is or Athens, scientific facts. And it's all so new. Most people had no idea, no conception. This hit them kind of like a backtrack. Like, boom, wow, look at this. We have scientific proof. Here's the scientific proof. Here we have three different primates, all related, but it was a hierarchy. We have Caucasian, and there's a Caucasian skull. African skull. Chimpanzee skull. Just by looking at the size of the skull, you can see the difference. More upright, flat, more close to chimpanzee. If you want to believe that there's a hierarchy of race, certain colors on top, what does that do for you? That picture? Yeah, it proves it. Gives you confirmation. It's actually called confirmation bias. It proves something you want to believe, and therefore you believe it. Is that true? It's so false, it's hard to even comprehend. First off, it was brand new, so people didn't really know. Secondly, who cares? They're not trying to be truthful. They're trying to justify what they want to do. Justify this. And so, it proves it. People of African descent are closer to chimpanzees. Is that science? No. It's kind of like science. It's called science. It's kind of science. And this is leading to something that some of you might know called social Darwinism. And it's no coincidence that 5 years before this book was written, Darwin was published. All ties into the Industrial Revolution. And one more thing, it's also really funny in a dark way. Anybody know what that is a picture of? You might have said, yeah. It's not Greek, but it's copying Greek statue. It's from the Renaissance. It's Michelangelo's David. It's a statue. It's a marble statue. So I guess they're saying that Caucasians are marble heads. I don't know what they're trying to say. Not even it's a statue of a person with a really big head. Because they want to make it look kind of proportional. It's actually really funny. In a dark way. Just wait. Eventually, they'll come, by the end of the century, they'll have a hierarchy of races and say there are over 38 races. There's 39, it's kind of iffy. 38 races. Like, for example, a race would be Irish, the Irish race, which would be inferior to English. So English can colonize it. And so on, Italian, etc. So, what do we have with this? By the way, this should all sound familiar what you're reading. This is civilizing them. It is civilizing enslaved people because remember, they're inferior. They would be uncivilized. How do we know this? Well, what's going to happen? They'll be just like little children. They will die without our help. They'll starve to death. We're doing them a favor. Now, sometimes like children, children don't know right or wrong. Sometimes you might have to discipline them a little. Give them the back of your hand, which, by the way, giving someone the back of your hand is called a cuff. That's mean. Come to it. Or they're brutal savages. And if we don't control them, if you free enslaved people, they will commit horrific crimes because they can't help it. They're closer to animals. And what is the crime they emphasize the most? Actually, not there. They emphasize the most if they were free within the United States. Specifically, former male slaves will rape white women. It's coming. Which is kind of ironic if you know the history of slavery. Remember the fornication laws. So, we're helping them. In fact, we're sacrificing, slave owners could say, to help these people civilize. They should be getting our thanks. It's natural too. It's in the Bible. The Bible. The Christian Bible, Old and New Testament, is full of how to care for slaves and various parts about slavery. Different type of slavery, not based upon color of skin, closer to indentured servitude, but still slaves are treated horribly. It's in the Gospels of the New Testament. about the way to treat slaves. So it's natural. Different type of slavery. This is going to blow up the Baptists. Southern Baptists will break off of Northern Baptists. Southern Baptists will say it's in the Bible, slavery is natural, slavery is good. Northern Baptists will disagree. Today, the Baptists are dominated by Southern Baptists. And then, of course, it's economic growth. This is the engine of economic growth of the whole United States. It's money from slavery which helps underpin Northern industry, they would say. This is the natural economic system. Why would you blow this up and it's making money? Now the money's dropping. It's kind of funny where Southern slave owners would say, it's working, it's making money. We are so poor. So this is a good thing. It's civilizing. It's natural. It's Christian. And it works. It's the economic system that works. So what is their view towards abolitionists or free soilers? They're destroying society. They're ruining things. They're the ones who are against nature. It is natural to have one group on top and one group on bottom. That is natural. And this ideology will eventually become known as and we'll get to it more. The people who want abolition are worse. And don't forget, the people who want abolition are murderers. Because you're going to unleash these savages on the former slaveholders. They'll kill them all. This ideology, put in big letters. Oh, you jump right in. The positive, good theory. So take out the reading I gave you. I gave you this yesterday. Defense of slavery. Go and take that out. So when you read it, and I know the wording's a little bit confusing. But here, so the positive good theory gets its start. So we have to know what the positive good theory is. This is a big deal. The positive good theory, and so there's a couple things you have to ask your notes too. We know this is Calhoun, right? This is from Calhoun. And he would become this ideological leader for this, how to protect slavery within the United States. But remember that I told you this before, so it's the Pakenham letters. So write down the Pakenham letters just so you don't forget. This first defense of slavery was the letter to the British ambassador to keep Britain from taking Texas. So at first it's all about Britain cannot have Texas, but then he turns it into this massive, unprecedented defense of slavery. Now they had been saying this and talking about this, but he put all this together. Calhoun was brilliant. He was evil. I don't know if he was a sociopath or had this cognitive dissonance. I really don't know. He could have been a sociopath and just wanted to keep enriching himself. All right. So it goes on, the first thing about so-called about Britain and the abolition of slavery. By the way, when they're talking about Britain or parts of the other, or Europe, he's talking about the Northern United States. He's talking about that system in the United States. So let's look at this right now. So if you look down that second paragraph, what did he say about slavery? How long has it happened? How long has it been going on? Did you catch that? How long? Huh? Yeah, from the beginning, there's been slavery. From the beginning, we've always had slavery. In fact, he begins to call it something else in the second paragraph. He doesn't just say from the first settlement, he says, what word? Yeah, he calls it the ancient relationship. The ancient relationship. So, this ancient relationship. It's been going on forever. This ancient relationship. So, implying from day one, this was the natural, you have this relationship of one group on top, one group and the other, and he uses race by color of skin. This relatively new idea. And then, a little bit lower in that paragraph, what does he said happen to the numbers of people if they get rid of slavery? I'm sorry, get rid of the ancient relationship. What happens? What happens to them? What happens to the population? That's that. Wherever the population is lower of one race, they get rid of slavery. They get rid of slavery. So that's the population is lower. When the population is up, they have to keep this ancient relationship. Look down the third paragraph. What happens to the condition of people of African descent if they keep the ancient relationship? Huh? If they keep the ancient relationship? Oh, let's start there since you said that. If they get rid of slavery, they sink into vice. Or what's pauperism? You know what pauperism is? No? You guys read it. Now, if you don't know a word, you gotta look it up. I get it. Don't know what, you gotta look it up. Take a second. If you don't know, pauperism is poverty. That's poverty. Pauperism and poverty. So you're thinking of, hey, what's vice? In crime. So add, if you did not know that, jot that down so you don't forget that. Say vice, same vice. And so you're right about like alcohol. It is something that we have decided is a sin, therefore we must make it illegal. Like drinking, certain time you're drinking at a certain age or whatever it might be. Drugs, it could be prostitution, gambling, especially certain types of gambling. Also, it's considered a sin crime, even though it is significantly more. It also shows you how women were treated. Rape. Rape is a horrific, violent crime. But they said, oh, it's just a sin. But they can't help themselves. They'll go off, they'll either starve to death or they'll commit horrific crimes. It's advised everybody to see. But they start to just become criminals. But if we keep the system, what's going to happen to them? They'll become smarter, become more moral. They'll learn to be civilized. Does he have proof of this? Does he have proof? The fourth paragraph. Does he have proof? He gives you numbers, doesn't he? The number of deaf, dumb, blind, idiots, and insane of Negroes in the States have changed the ancient relationship between the races. It's 1 out of 96. It's only 1 out of 672 in the former. That's 7-1 in the favor of the latter. That's a weird way of putting it. And so do you catch that by fraction? There are more deaf, dumb, blind, idiots, and insane. And where they got rid of the ancient relationship than where they kept it. That means there's a less chance that they will become deaf, dumb, blind, idiots, and insane. So first off, what's dumb mean? Can't speak. Can't speak. By the way, how do you measure an idiot? Is there a box you check off? Like you know, like I'm male idiot. So on check. How do you measure insane people? Is there another box you check off? Like they have a census, you say yes, idiot, yes. Insane. Yeah. How do you measure that? No, he gave you numbers. And if you have numbers, it's kind of like that picture I showed you before, the skulls. Doesn't that give you like proof? I got proof now and I want to believe it. But where did he get those numbers? They kind of do some of this on the census, but not, I mean, you don't measure it. So where did he get those numbers? Where did those numbers come from? 1 out of 96 and 1 out of what is it, 672? They came from someplace. Trying to think. It came from someplace. Someplace. He pulled them out of somewhere. I'm trying to think of, I can't think of it. Could be anywhere. I don't know what I'm referring to. Do we get the point here? Totally made them up. Throw it out there, but it gave people what they wanted to see. They gave them what they wanted to hear. And they have other sources of this. That is the first one. And so that he's laying it out. Now I forgot to put the year there, but if you look down to the next reading, we're going to jump right to that. You see the positive good theory by John C. Calhoun? I forgot to put the year. It's 1846. So now he's coalescing that idea. So let's jump to this very quickly. I know there's a lot of good things in it, but we got the main part. I'm going to give you a few minutes. Read through this and underline the parts where he refines that civilizing idea and that the system is better. And don't forget, when he talks about places in Europe that are civilized, what he's really talking about is the north. And he's kind of mocking civilization. So I'll give you about 2 minutes. You should better read that in 2 minutes. So. Pretty amazing. He's clever. He's smart. He's evil. I'm biased against slavery, so I don't even hear about this. But he said that's always happened throughout history. The slave, how did he call it? How he called it? He gave it a word. There's always going to be one group who will live on the labor homes. The people on top will live on the labor homes. The group on top. And this is workers for them. So that whole thing about equality, no, people, well at all. One group on top. Yeah. Nice little hierarchy. And he compares the both. What happens to the workers in civilized area of Europe? When he means civilized area of Europe, he means the northern United States. What happens to them? That's for the people in the South. He kind of words it weirdly, even though I get why he's that. Yeah. They're, what do we call the term for it? Someone who's trapped in the system. Yeah, they're wage slaves. So when they're born, no one's caring for them except their family. They're poor. They have nothing. And so they live in pauperism, poverty. If they get a job, sure, they might work a little bit on the wage, but they have no help, no care for them. They go home and they got to figure out everything for themselves. If they're unemployed and in a panic, they have nothing. And when they're old and retired, what happens to them? They don't. Nobody cares for them. What happens to those who are still under the ancient relationship? Who cares for them? From the day they're born, the master and mistress is there. caring for them, protecting them from the very moment they're born. They're sick, they're at the bedside. And when they're too old to work, up north, they're just thrown out in the streets. You're too old to work, you die. You go to a poorhouse. In south, loving care. What system's better? System where workers are treated like garbage and thrown out in the street what's going to work, or the one that cares for them from cradle to grave. That labor sounds pretty good, doesn't it? Who's with me? Sounds pretty nice. But there's something more. So not only is it that it's better. Now, you notice that? He didn't just say, hey, we should keep slavery because it's making us money. He's going to, it's better, and we should spread that system here. He also, out this entire reading, he just hints at it here, but he does it very cleverly. Workers are treated better than workers. Labor is always someone on top, someone on the bottom doing the work. What color is skin are the people on the bottom in the north? What color? White. Horribly up here, which is unnatural. And eventually, what will he do? If they're not going to take this system where they're treated horribly, what will they do? They will revolt. And this is the last part we have to get from this. What he's saying is, this unnatural system in the north of wage slavery will lead to rebellion. Is that what you want? This system is natural. This is what we should spread. This system is rules. It's unnatural to treat white people that way. It drips with racism, obviously. And here's a cartoon of it, and it's master and mistress, and they say, poor things, they can't take care of themselves. That's the child life. Here's another one. And it says slavery as it exists in England, which meant the North, everybody knew, and you have poor, impoverished people on the streets, starving, begging for a job, not getting it. No one cares for them, living on the street. And look at them in the South. Wage slaves, a better system. Dancing, having fun. Notice the banjo? Sounds pretty good, doesn't it? You notice there's a lot of banjo shots. And this would become, and add this last thing, the positive good theory would become the ideology. When I say Southern ideology, and Northern system was worse, condemning us to revolution, or worse, condemning us to have our throat cut in the middle of the night. So let's get a couple more notes really quick for the bell rings. I know, I don't quit working. So that's what this who called the Gone with the Wind. The Gone with the Wind myth. Has anyone ever heard of the book or the movie Gone with the Wind? Has anyone seen it? It's a very good movie, but it's like 4 hours long. Made in 36, came out in 37, won the Best Picture award. It defeated a movie that actually was a cut from Fox. No one liked. Called The Wizard of Oz. Kind of an interesting little tidbit. It's a very good movie, but in the movie, it portrays this idealized South that will become taught to students and told to tourists in the South that it was an idealized plantation life. This idealized South where the heroes of the Gone with the Wind were the slave owners, and the villains were the North and Union soldiers, and how they fought through and reestablished themselves. And I should add the slaves like slavery. If you get a chance, I would recommend it. But it's long. Did you like the movie, those who have seen it? I hope you did, but it's idealized, and the acting style is a little bit different. Okay, so this idealized South, that's what the Gone with the Wind was. So here's another one. This is 1850s, the old plantation home, and look what they show: happy slaves. You notice the banjo, curtains in the home. That's exactly the way it was, wasn't it? This idealized life. There's going to be a series of these musical shows called minstrel shows that will push this. usually white actors mocking blacks, enslaved people in the South. They put blackface on and make fun of it. That's why white people with blackface is so offensive. And soon the South will call this a peculiar institution. It's just peculiar, it's weird. It's not slavery, it's not chattel slavery, torturing people to death and slavery. No, it's just peculiar. And once again, see the picture? There's no shortage of pictures promoting slavery with someone with a banjo. And this will be taught for years. Anybody want to guess what children's book will be sold at Mount Vernon? Still is sold at Mount Vernon. Who lived at Mount Vernon? George Washington. A birthday cake for George Washington. Still sold to this day. And it's showing happy cooks making a cake. Look at them having fun. They're servants. They're just making a cake. They're slaves. They're enslaved people. And it doesn't show it. It's still sold to this day. So this Gone with the Wind myth is still around. But what we have here is a form of proto-capitalism, where the humans are the capital, the machines. You might hear some economists or historians say that there's capitalism before the Industrial Revolution. It's not really capitalism because capital are machines owned by one person. But what they mean is people were using humans as machines. So it's a primitive or proto. And humans are capital got more valuable. This is in 2000 numbers, but the peak of the value of a human being. So I'm saying basically a young adult male or female was in 2000 is a little over 300,000. That's about 470,000 today for one human being. That was real wealth. And most people didn't have that type of money. We mentioned it before, debt. We got to get to one more thing before the bell rings. Oh, more slave is more wealth. And the bigger, the more wealth you get. So who's going to dominate the economy, the scale? The biggest. We have to get to one more thing with bell rings. One more thing. These slave labor camps had a way of pushing it's called the pushing or the quota system. And this is how it worked. When I first heard about slavery, and I bet every one of you thinks the same thing. I bet we all did. I know I did. I had this vision of slaves working and someone behind them whipping them. Work, work, work. You got that image? That's incredibly inefficient. That's not the way slavery worked at all. Slavery works like this. When you first arrived at a plantation, let's say you were an unfortunate enslaved person forced downriver to Mississippi on a plantation, and you'd be given a quota. You'd be sent out to work that first day, and you would pick cotton, picking cotton. And they would weigh how much cotton you have, and that would be your quota. And you have to meet that the next day. And if you don't meet that quota, meet it, or what will happen? You will be tortured. You will be tortured. Usually whipped, sometimes more. A big one is they would whip you, but a lot of times mothers, they whip your children. It's a slavery. It's as bad as you can imagine. So what do? You're going to figure out a way to meet the quota, aren't you? Aren't you going to figure out a way? This will be an incentive for workers to increase their productivity, to find ways to become more efficient and quick quality. And they'll figure it out themselves. Remember I mentioned slave? There's actually two slaves who invented the cotton gin. They were trying to figure out a way to meet their quota. And then Eli Whitney stole it. And then what happens if you meet your quota? What do they do to your quota the next day? They raise it. So what happens to production? They get more productive. This system is so sinister. They didn't need to have overseers in the field all the time. They just had to do overseers who are normally enslaved people too. And they just had to make sure you met your quota of pounds of cotton, whatever it might be. It was so effective. Whenever you see, they show a picture of an enslaved person with their back full of scars, normally that's someone who said, the hell with your quota, I won't. They thought back. And that was the win. Tomorrow, make sure you have the cause. Sound good? Oh, I forgot. Pushing means they push up the number. Does that make sense? Push it, push it, push it up. It's sinister. That seems more evil than standing behind you and whipping you.
You know, it's